Good evening and welcome to the RTM Joint Committee presentations on Monday, March 18th. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Before we get started, I just wanted to make an announcement. Matthew Jacobs from District 3 and his wife just gave birth to their son. So wanted to extend a congratulations to him and his family. Everyone's doing well. The first item on our agenda is a report from the HDC on 554 Tunxis Hill Road. So please come forward. Just so the RTM is aware, this is different than most reports that we deal with. We actually have to accept or reject this report. And if we accept it, it triggers a process by which we would amend the ordinance to include this property as a property that is historically designated. So with that, you can introduce yourself, just explain the process more than I have, and then I guess explain your report that you've given us.
My name is Rosina Negron. I'm one of the commissioners with the Historic District Commission. Part of Section 7147Q of the General Statutes is the procedures for the establishment of historic properties. So we followed all the steps up to coming into the RTM. We established a committee within the HDC. We put together the report. The report was provided to Town Planning and Zoning and to the State Historic Preservation Office. Both parties reviewed it and provided letters back to us. Following that, we did a public hearing on February 21st to present to the community the report, and in attendance, the owners and the congregation were there. After that, basically the next step was to let the RTM know that all the process had been put together and for you guys to make your decision. So the property is Trinity St. Michael's Episcopal Church in 554 Tunxis Hill Road. Basically, I can quickly read the report if that helps, because it's a brief history and architectural detail of what it is, or I can just pick the important piece.
Yeah, I don't think you need to read the report. We'll read it if we haven't already, but there are things that you want to highlight to us or emphasize. You can go ahead and do that.
So basically, the most important thing, which we found in the Fairfield Museum, indicates that the church is architecturally significant as one of the best examples of English-derived buildings in Fairfield. English revival styles, which are used in residential buildings in Fairfield, are extremely underrepresented in institutional buildings in town. This church, which survives in a remarkable state of preservation, achieves its picturesque quality through its asymmetrical massing, using the parapets, rustic rubble stone surface. So basically, that is the main point of why it's significant, as well as it was built by local Italian immigrants. So those are kind of the main points of the significance of the church for the community and for Fairfield.
Thank you. And so we'll open it up to questions. So everyone's aware, the town attorney did review the process that was followed to date and confirmed that it complied with the statute. And am I correct in understanding that the owner is supportive of having the property designated?
We actually have one representative from the church, so.
Okay, and they're supportive? You're supportive? Yes. Okay. Okay. So we'll open it up to questions. Anyone have any questions or comments? Representative Durrell.
I'm sorry, Alex Durrell, RTM3. They have blood drives there, right? Yes. I'm sorry. I mean, sit down and I'm sorry. Well, I didn't mean to make her.
We used to. However, they do not like.
Please speak into the microphone.
Well, they do not like to use our stairs, and so they have decided to have them elsewhere. So we've had our last one. No, we are not having blood drives anymore because of the difficulty of the stairs and getting the stairs up to the parish hall.
Right, I used to give there. One other, how much room is there, and how many worshipers do you generally have on a Sunday afternoon, which would be morning, I assume?
Well, I have a list, not all of them come, so it's quite a small group. And I would say usually there are 6 to 15, and then there's probably 35 members. It's quite small.
In the entire church?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
No. Okay, thank you, that's all.
You're welcome.
Further questions or comments? Representative Perrin.
I actually haven't come to this up.
Hi, Doreen Herron, District 9. I'm sorry, I'm not that familiar with designating them to be historic districts, so would there be a con to doing it, just so that for better understanding of the body?
So basically, Fairfield has 3 historic districts. There are 9 properties existing to date that are outside of those 3 historic districts. If this property is designated, there is nothing that goes against the property other than it comes in front of the HDC for review if there's any exterior envelope modifications. There's nothing that affects the neighbors at all, so it's basically just to protect the property in the future. And the owners or the congregation was the one that approached the HDC to see if it was significant enough to move forward and become another one of the designated properties.
So am I understanding that it would just be that the process might be a little bit more stringent?
Exactly.
If the owner, or if there was a transaction, a following owner wanted to
Yes.
make, okay. So
Kind of, for example, if in 20 years' time someone decides that it needs to be demolished, then it has to come forward to the Historic District Commission to make the right decisions.
Thank you.
Yep.
Representative Dean.
Representative Dean, District 3. Thank you very much for this work. I'm really pleased whenever I see a building coming under being plaqued and considered historic. It's wonderful. My only concern is financial with regards to the owners, because my own church, First Church, has had significant difficulties in the past with regards to affordability, with maintaining the integrity of what the Historic District Commission would deem appropriate for the age of the building and the neighborhood and for the district. Is there enough funding by the owners to be able to meet the requirements for upkeep so that it will always maintain its integrity and its appropriateness?
Well, I can't really answer that. I don't know what kind of repairs or whatever you're talking about or the extent. But it's funded well enough for now. The main thing is that if it should become too many, have to be sold or something, I did not want to, or none of us wanted it to become a Kohl's parking lot. It's too beautiful a building, and so it was to protect the building. So, yes, I've always lived in historic districts. I know the problems of maintaining appropriate roofs and so forth. And we are quite aware of that, and we have discussed it, but I don't know what amount of money you might be talking about, but we're funded now.
Further questions or comments? Representative Lopez.
Hi, Erin Lopez, District 2. So I was just wondering if this is an independent church. I know Episcopal is on here. Like, is it owned by a diocese, or like how is the ownership
It's actually
established?
owned by the parishioners according to the contract that we have. I mean, that it is Trinity St. Michael's. Parishioners are the owners of the church.
So if someone joins...
But we
your
always
church-
go and ask the bishop, and, we go through the diocese, so.
Okay. It just seems like you have a very small congregation, so it
It
seems
is
like
very-
it could
yes.
be a large financial burden for a small congregation. I'm just wondering if that's something that...
Well, it is part of the Episcopal diocese, and they do sign off on things. So,
Okay, thank you.
and it was mentioned to the bishop about 2 years ago that we were going to proceed with this. So,
Further questions or comments? Representative Gerber.
I think Bill Gerber, District 2. I think this might be more for the moderator. One of the, and this is my fault completely, I'm not educated on what being designated actually means, and what the pros and cons are for the town. For example, what's going through my mind is like, do you get exemptions from codes? I mean, is there some sort of, fire or whatever types of codes you get exemptions from? Is there some way, or maybe we can be pointed to where we should look to educate ourselves on this? Because it seems like as a property owner, it would, on a pure dollars and cents, I don't really know why anyone would want to restrict themselves. I don't know what the upside is if you own a property, why you would want to restrict, or encumber yourself in any way, but there has to be some upside, I'm assuming. So maybe we need to be educated somewhat on what this actually means to the town. But or you could just say, leave it up to us to figure it out on our own. But I don't think I've ever seen this before. A new property since I've been on the RTM. I don't think I've been involved in this, so I actually don't really understand what it means to vote something onto the rolls.
So I think some of that needs to be answered by the town attorney, so we could ask him for, is there the possibility that the property once designated would be exempt from certain code requirements that otherwise would have to meet? My understanding is, as it was presented, is that it really just makes it more restrictive, because to make alterations, you've got to comply with the historic district regulations, even though it's not in the district. So it's subject to that additional oversight and preserves the building. So we could ask the town attorney if there are any requirements that it would not be forced to comply with if it had to go through some sort of renovation or work.
Thank you. I mean, what's going through my mind is, as a property owner, it's unclear to me why anyone would want to do this to their own property, but to restrict yourself.
Well, we consider it a sacred property, and we want to maintain it as a church. So I mean,
right, but it is your church.
It's our church,
and you can do it. You can do that, right? Or
right.
You just want to protect
There are
it.
very few churches. There aren't any buildings like this in Fairfield, really. It's quite unique.
So you want to make sure that future generations don't.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Representative Iacono?
Thank you, Pam Iacono, District 8. So just to be clear, your congregation sought this out, or the Historic Commission went to you and asked to designate it?
The congregation did.
So can you just explain to the body how that process worked? Did you have to get a sign-off from the bishop to do that?
Not really. I mean, the bishop is in Hartford, and many Episcopal churches are designated as historic churches, and it was not really discussed pro or con. Oh, another church is going to apply to be, historic, maintained. So I just followed the procedures. I went and asked the historic district what the procedure was, and we've been working on this for, what, a year, 2 years or so, trying to get all the dots in the right place.
Okay. I'm Catholic. We're a little more uptight, I guess. So. It seemed like it would be a little bit harder for us to do this, but I'm sorry. All right, I'm speaking for myself. All right, so there's nothing you need to do. You just come together as a congregation, you take a vote, you decide that you want to become part of the historic district, and then you filled out the application and went through the whole historic district process, and they decided to deem you an historic building. And you all as a congregation are willing to deal with the fact that you're going to be dealing with much more restrictive process should you need to replace a window, or if a roof tile falls off, or you don't want to have the color of your door the way it is anymore. You fully understand that that's something that all of those different types of things are now going to have to be scrutinized.
Colors is not something that the Historic Commission.
All right, well, not colors, but roofing materials and all of those types of things. You guys are all comfortable with all of that?
Yes.
Okay.
Representative Vergara?
Jill Vergara, District 7. I just want to thank you for pursuing this. I think it's just a positive good for the town to preserve history in this way. And since it was initiated by the owners, I don't see any reason not to grant this. It's just good for the town to preserve its history. I almost wish that we could impose this on certain situations like the Sturgis Barn and Fairfield University, that it's such a shame to lose that. But thank you so much for coming forward and protecting our history.
Representative Smay? Can you use the microphone?
1922, it was consecrated, 1922, and as a mission, it had been there a few years prior to that, but then the stone, it's native field stone that the Italians put together themselves, and it's quite unique that way.
So it's 97 years old, it's not quite 100 years old.
Not quite 100, not quite.
But a lot of the things that they have in the church itself came from one church in Bridgeport that was demolished because of Route 8, Route 25, and Route 95. So
I am also going to support your, and vote for your church to be a...
Further questions or comments? Representative Beauvais?
Hello, Lauren Beauvais, District 7. I'm for this. I think it should be preserved. It's a unique piece of architecture. Also, it will preserve it for the future, which is important. And also, I read something about the stones were used to build it. The unique facade was local to the area.
It is local, yes,
So,
local stones.
From a farm nearby.
Yes.
I mean, it's really very Fairfield, so, and it's special, so I'd like it to stay. Is there any chance, my last thing, for getting money because it's designated? Is there trusts or funds or anything?
Well, that was suggested to me, but I have not pursued anything. First of all, we haven't had any major things that we have to deal with, but I understand there are grants and so forth that one can apply for.
So this would be helpful for that, for you and for the church.
Yeah, oh, very much. Yes,
And for the
very,
building.
very much.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Representative Durrell?
Yes. How many square feet is it, or like how many acres is it? I know it's like 1/6 of an acre or something like that in terms of space.
It has that very building in the back.
It's uneven, but I mean, obviously where the parking lot is and all that. I'm sorry.
In here somewhere. I don't think it says. Oh.
You can email it to me if you want.
there's a plot plan in
There
the report itself.
I'm not sure it actually says that. It just gives you the plot.
Well, one of the reasons I'm asking is there's a farmhouse in my neighborhood on Judd Street and all that, although it's in a different district, and it has a plaque on it. This property is, what is it? I can't read it. Limited and, whatever the word, verb. What is that verb? Issued. Issued in the Historic and Architectural Survey of Fairfield, Connecticut, July 1998, Fairfield Historical Society, Connecticut Historical Commission. Is that the same thing, I'm guessing?
No, I
Okay,
believe
good.
the Judd Farm, it's not locally designated as a historic property. It was, I'm not sure, but I know the town or the museum did some sort of survey, and in the website of the museum indicated that the Judd Farm, it's one of those historically significant buildings to Fairfield, but I don't believe is locally, national, or state designated.
Right, okay.
So it's a little bit different because this will turn Trinity St. Michael's into a locally designated church property, so.
Okay. All right, I'm asking about the acreage because this is I assume something like yours on 2.5 acres around the neighborhood from me, but right now, the Fairfield Housing Authority has bought it and is thinking of putting a lot on it. So, save your property. I don't know what's going on in my neighborhood. And you've got God on your side too, so.
It's about gross area of the building itself, it's about 12 to 13,000.
Here's what we
Square
have.
feet?
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Was it 50?
Gross is, yeah, 1 minute.
Further questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you for presenting, and since we are voting on this next week, I would encourage you to attend in case there are any other questions. Thank you. Next, we'll take the Tower Ladder Fire Truck Bond Resolution. evening, Chief.
McCarthy, Fairfield Fire Department, and Deputy Chief Kieran Dunn. So, we submitted in the packet that you have the 14 points detailing the project. And in addition to that, the vehicle replacement program for the Fairfield Fire Department, which this has been part of for some time, is planned into our vehicle replacement schedule, as well as a photo exhibit of a typical tower ladder, similar to what we propose to purchase if the funding is approved. The vehicle is an important part of the department's fleet. It is the single vehicle that is capable of reaching the tallest buildings, or some of the tallest buildings that we have in town, and its purpose is for rescue, ventilation, access to the roof, a safe platform for firefighters to work from, and potentially rescue residents that are trapped above. The vehicle would be able to reach 107 feet from grade. It would reach 6, 7 stories up, depending on how close we can get to the building. It can also reach below grade if there was an ice rescue or water rescue, allow us to go off the side, and you can see in the photographs how it would be deployed off the side of the highway or onto a pond. We keep our frontline vehicles in service for 12 years. We are reaching the end of life for frontline service for our current ladder truck. When this vehicle is purchased, the current ladder truck will serve as a reserve for 12 years, giving us a full 24 years of service for this major piece of equipment. The process that we have taken to make the decision to go forward with the request is first to evaluate the calls that we respond to, the hazards, and the future construction in town. And certainly we recognize that construction, particularly in the commercial district, in the beach district, at the Fairfield University and Sacred Heart University, we're adding to our building stock that requires a ladder truck. So the problem is not being reduced, it's actually increasing our need for a fully capable 100-foot aerial device. Once we made that decision, we then evaluated all of the manufacturers, the major manufacturers that produce ladder trucks and towers, had them come and demonstrate their equipment at the Fairfield Training Grounds, and about 8 manufacturers provided demonstrations of their equipment. We had not only our personnel, but personnel from neighboring departments who own and operate similar types of devices. We had Bridgeport and Trumbull, who have a device similar to the Pierce manufacturing aerial truck that we hope to purchase. So we consulted with them. We reviewed all of the operating mechanisms of the various manufacturers, made a decision that this is the style and the type and the capability that we want, and have proceeded with the funding request. If the funding is approved, we will develop the specifications and go out to competitive bid. And once that bid is awarded, it will take up to a year for us until we receive the vehicle. So sometime, if approved by the RTM, we will go out to bid by July 1st, and by July 1st, 2020, we should receive delivery of the vehicle.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments on this item? Representative Vergara.
Jill Vergara, District 7. I think this is so important to purchase for the town. I fielded several questions from constituents in the beach area wondering whether we're keeping up with our emergency vehicles and the building that we're doing, the high-rise building in the beach area. I thought it was interesting in one of your conclusions that you point to the building at Sacred Heart and Fairfield U as being one of the substantial sources and kind of a burden on your department. Have we approached Sacred Heart or Fairfield U in terms of funding for extra vehicles that might be necessary to service their dormitories?
We have not. We have adjusted our fee schedule for fire marshals, plans review and inspections. The increase in funding for the fire department through the revenue that we receive. Previously, we were collecting revenue from plans review and inspections in the order of about $30,000 to $40,000 a year. With this change in plan review fee schedule, we are now receiving revenues somewhere in the $200,000 to $250,000 a year range. Our intent is that that fee will cover not only the cost of the code review inspection process for construction, but for the life of the building. That, you know, it is a high fee because we own the building for public safety purposes for its lifespan, as opposed to the building department who imposes a similar fee, higher but similar fee. Their responsibility of the building ends after a certificate of occupancy is issued. Fire department has fire protection and fire suppression responsibilities for the life of the building. So we have done that. There is legislation pending, or at least been introduced to allow communities to impose fees on nonprofit organizations, particularly colleges and universities, to recoup the cost of fire protection. And we're following that as it passes through the state legislature.
And that could relate to this purchase?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Representative Iacono?
Thank you. So just to follow up on that, to be clear, since you've now changed your whole structure, and since many of the high rises in town seem to be over in the Fairfield U, mainly Sacred Heart area due to dormitories, those increased fees and things that your department's getting are going to help offset the cost of having to take care of the taller buildings. Is that what I'm to understand you to
So
say?
the purpose of the change in fee schedule is really to deal with the code enforcement part of it, not the fire suppression and protection side. It was an intent to increase the revenue for our fire prevention division. But it is a significant change in our funding structure. It's the only revenue that the Fairfield Fire Department collects, other than some minor fees. So it's really intended to offset the cost of code enforcement, but it is a significant number.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay.
And you, and per the report, and based on what Representative Vergara said, the taller buildings in town are on those campuses?
Well, I wouldn't exclude,
I mean, we have
there
some of
are
the
a
new
number of tall buildings.
apartments.
For concentration, yes, but you look at the development on Commerce Drive, the metro development, the metro station development that is proposed, all similar construction to the Trademark Building, which is on the corner of Commerce and Black Rock Turnpike.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Representative Bove?
Representative Bove, District 7. I'm assuming this would allow us to increase the number of floors of commercial buildings. We would have a truck that could reach higher floors, and we don't have that now, or we have a limited capacity.
So we are, and ladder trucks typically don't reach, above, 80 feet. Given the angle of the ladder, safe operating angles, so it does not give a significant opportunity to raise height limitations, and that certainly is a decision that is made by others other than the fire department, regardless of the equipment that we have.
So what would this fire truck allow us to have that we don't have now?
So it is a replacement of an existing vehicle, and the purpose is to maintain the capability of the fire department. Certainly this has some capabilities that are above, that provide a safer operating platform for firefighters, more easily deployed, quicker to set up, but it does not change the overall capability of the fire department as it relates to height.
And the letter is the same size as the letter it's replacing.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thanks, Chief. Thanks,
Okay,
Deputy Chief.
Thank you very much.
Next, we're going to take an item out of order. We're going to take the recovery of costs amendment so that we can let our Chief of Police go home before the Board of Ed contract. So, Chief Liddy, if you wouldn't mind coming forward, and Attorney Abercrombie. I don't think that there were any updates, so this is really just a chance for our members to ask further questions. Is there any update from either the co-sponsors or from the neighborhood association?
No.
Okay.
No.
So does anyone have any questions on the ordinance? Okay, if there is an update.
Sorry, it's just that there isn't an update, which is, I have, just in response to the question about Fairfield University students, I've made multiple attempts to reach out to them, explaining the ordinance and sending them copies of the amendments and offering to meet with them, and I've had no responses from them. They're on break now, and these are a lot of student leaders, both student government and also who live at the beach, so I can only surmise that it's because it's just not a high priority for them.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Representative Vergara?
Jill Vergara, District 7. Have you thought about the change to 2-year rather than 3-year?
I have, and I would not be in favor of reducing it from 3 years to 2 years. I think 3 years is a reasonable amount of time. It's consistent with, I'm sorry, I thought I was. I think it's consistent with the objectives of the ordinance. I think it would diminish it to reduce it to 2 years.
Okay, and just to refresh, the original was 6 months.
The original was 6 months.
Okay. And I just wanted to point out that subsection D should be C, just before we vote on this.
I'm sorry?
In the Article 1 recovery for costs, there's A, B, and then D. It should be C. Yeah, it's just a typo.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you for that was an update. Thank you for the update and for presenting. Next we have the Fairfield Administrator Association contract. Representative Horton. It is part of the it's part of the backup. Okay. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Stephen Sedor. I'm the Board of Education's attorney, and I handle the negotiations for the administrator's contract. With me, you all know Jeff Peterson. He was the Board of Education's representative on the negotiations committee. So I'm going to prepare for you and give to you a summary of what the agreement is that has been reached. I'll try and give you as much as I can as you go, and I'll be glad to give you the answers to any questions that you have. In sum, the contract from a wage settlement standpoint was below both the state and county average, and the insurance settlement that we reached is projected to mitigate the rise in the insurance costs by about $73,000 over the life of the 3-year contract. Does everybody have a copy of the memo that I had prepared? Because I'd like to refer to it as we go, just because I think it would be helpful. And to start with, I'd like to begin by what the salary obligations are for the board with the administrators right now. And if you take a look at the 5th page of the packet of the memo, you're going to see that there's a series of charts there.
Is this part of Exhibit A?
It is. So the top chart, it says salary schedule. That's what the board's current salary schedule is for the 18-19 year. So if somebody is, for example, on step 1, category 3, they're earning $137,179. If they are category 1, step 6, their salary is $184,514. That's the current schedule. You'll see a category called red circled that's down on the left. If those of you who were here last year remember, what happened was those who were on step 5 for the settlement last year advanced a step, but they didn't get the raise associated with what happened to those who were on step 6. So they remained at that sort of fictitious step, and that was their salary. The second chart sets forth how many people are at each one of those steps. So, for example, there are 2 people at category 1, step 6, which is the headmaster. There are 2 people at step 2, category 2, red circled. And then the third chart below, that's the monetary value of what is at each step. So there's 1 person at step 1, category 3, so there's $137,179 in costs at that step. When you add up all of that together, you get a total salary schedule of $6,064,061 with 40 bargaining unit members. So that's the current salary obligation. Now, in understanding the settlement, the first thing that we also need to go over is the cost of increment. For those who don't recall from last year, or for those who weren't here, I'll explain what that is. Aside from and notwithstanding any wage increase, there's a cost associated with moving from one step to the next. So if someone from step 2 takes 3 steps and goes to step 5, there's a cost associated with that before any general wage increase is given. Now, for this particular contract, the step cost is actually pretty high compared to most administrators' contracts. The first year, the step cost is just over 2%. And then the second year, it's 0.93%. And the third year, it's 0.74%. So the total cost just to move a step each year of the contract is $229,000, which is 3.76% of the schedule. And I'd like to point out to you what a couple of the issues are. If you look back at Exhibit A and you look back at the salary schedule, take a look first at the top chart and take a look at step 5 and then step 6. And you're going to see that there's quite a distance between step 5 and step 6. It's called a bubble. Over the course of years during negotiations, those are not uncommon. What typically happens or may happen is, in order to keep the salary settlement low, everybody might not move a step, they just get a wage increase, and then there's a distribution to the people who are at max so that they get a wage increase, or there is just a step movement without wage increase, and then a distribution to max. And over time what happens is the distance between the second to the last step and the step increases. The other thing to look at is on the second chart, you'll see that in the first year, 13 people go from step 5 to step 6, or from the red circled step to step 6. So that means that there's 7 people that go across that big bubble. And that's why the cost of increment in the first year is so high. And in general, why the overall cost of increment is relatively high for an administrator's contract. So that being the case, hopefully I've presented that well. Let's get to exactly what it was that the contract was for, and the total salary wage increase, including step, is 6.61% on a year-to-year basis, and it's 6.75% when compounded. And of that, the structure is going to be, for the first year, everyone moves a step, and there's a 0.5% general wage increase. In year 2, everyone moves a step, and there's a 1.0% wage increase. And in year 3, there's a step movement plus 1.33% wage increase. And if you look at page 2 of the memo, the very top part, it breaks out what the dollar value of it is per year. So the first year, step plus 0.5% is 2.6%, and it's $157,000. You can obviously read it for yourself. I'm not going to go through it, but the total amount of new money that the settlement is going to cost in salary is $409,000. But again, $229,000 of that, more than half, is step movement. So what also is going to happen, because of that bubble that is in place, there's going to be a new salary schedule for new employees. And what's going to happen is, effective the first day of this contract, there's going to be 2 new steps put in between steps 5 and step 6 in order to break apart that bubble. And in addition, what's going to happen is July 1/19, the first year of the contract, we're going to eliminate what is now the first step, and then the start of the second year of the contract, again, the first step will be removed. It's our thought that the top steps, or the first 2 steps of the contract, with the wage offering that it is a little uncompetitive. And so taking off the 2 first steps makes it more competitive, and it also breaks apart the bubble by inserting those 2 steps. Okay? So now, the next questions everyone's going to ask is, well, where does that leave us comparatively? And I've got some comparisons on the memo for you. So first, the state average. At the time we settled the contract, the state average, according to CABE's publications, was 6.75 on a year-to-year basis. It's now, according to CABE's most recent publication, 6.72% on a year-to-year basis. So on a year-to-year basis, we're below the state average. So now what about Fairfield County, since that's our most immediate locale? If you take a look at the bottom of page 2, I've broken out all of the settlements from Fairfield County that took place this year. Stamford was a 1-year contract, so I calculated these averages in 2 ways. Number 1, to take into account Stamford's 1-year deal, and number 2, to not take it into account and just give a full 3-year average. And as you can see, the average by year, including Stamford, is 6.69, and the total 3-year average is 6.63 for Fairfield County. Now that includes every single district that's settled, which includes Bridgeport. And it's not a stretch to say that we're not really going to be compared to Bridgeport due to the disparity in the wealth ranking. So on page 3 at the top, I also did an analysis that removes Bridgeport from the equation and what the average is in Fairfield County without Bridgeport. And you can see that it's either 7.03% or 6.98%, depending on how you want to calculate it. And then to anyone who will say, well, that's taking out the low. What happens if you take out the high? The next chart, what I did was I took out the highest average in Fairfield County and the lowest average in Fairfield County, and it comes out to 6.81% or 6.76%. Now, the one analysis that I didn't put in here that I really should have is the comparative settlements to those in Fairfield's reference group, which is reference group B. The other settlements that came in the average in B, as according to my calculations, it's 7.96%. Granby settled at 10%. Brookfield settled at 7.56%, and Greenwich settled at 6.32%. So in all the analysis on a year-to-year basis, we did below the average slightly, and again, we compound out to 6.75%. The information, by the way, that's published by CABE, that's the settlements on a year-to-year basis. Not compounded. They can't give you the compounded number because you wouldn't know what the total monetary amount of the value would be versus what the total salary schedule was that they started with. One thing that I would also like to point out about this settlement especially is the structure, which is pretty advisable in my judgment. Again, to have you go back to Exhibit A, when you look at the Step 6, and the salaries on Step 6. That's the top step. So what's going to happen is, because of the way this is structured, the top step, meaning Step 6, is going to increase over the life of the contract by less than 3%. Now, why does that matter? It matters because over the life of this contract, all but 4 administrators are going to go to Step 6. So by virtue of the fact that we kept Step 6 lower than 3%, the structure overall is beneficial as well. Okay, so that's wages. Insurance, I mentioned it a bit. What's going to happen is they are going to increase in premium cost share by 0.5% per year. Currently, health insurance is being provided by the State Plan 2.0. So the plan design and any changes there too are provided by and made by the state. The primary, really only issue to argue over is the premium cost share. Right now, the administrators are at 25%, which is one of, if not the highest in the state already. I was unable to unearth another contract where administrators are paying 25%. It is the highest that are paid for those who are on the State Plan 2.0. So they'll go from 25 to 26.5 over the life of the contract, and it's projected that that's going to save $73,000. Well, I shouldn't say save. It's going to mitigate in the rise of the insurance costs by about $73,000. Those are the economics. As far as the language and work rule changes, the first thing that we had to do was modify the contract to take account of the United States Supreme Court case decision in the Janus matter. Basically, Connecticut was formerly an agency shop. You didn't have to join the union, but if you did not, you had to pay an agency fee to get the benefits of the union membership anyway. The Janus decision eliminated that rule, and so we made contract changes that took that decision into effect. Next, long-term disability payments. They're going to begin now after 180 days instead of what used to be 360 days. The number of vacation days for administrators will go from 23 to 25, and then sick days will increase from 15 to 18 per year, and they can accrue up to 175 days. It previously was 150. That gets the sick days and accrual at least closer to what the comparable administrative contracts really are. So that's my presentation. I'll be glad to handle any questions that anybody has. I'll do the best I can to answer them.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Representative McDermott.
Mark McDermott, District 7. 2 questions here.
Sure.
This, and maybe it's not for you, maybe it's for the BOE. The $157,000 for 2019-20 budget, is that in the superintendent's budget currently?
No, because this contract has not been approved yet. There's a wage and benefit reserve in the budget that anticipates that a contract will be settled. So that money is in a different bucket in the budget.
Okay, but it is in the budget somewhere.
We are anticipating that wages will go up for this unit for the 1920 school year, yes.
Okay, thank you. And this bubble that has been created over the years, by adding these two new steps, is that going to be eliminated for good, or do we see this coming down the pike again at some point?
Will another bubble emerge?
Yes.
It's likely that several contracts down the road you will see them. To some extent, they're unavoidable when you're trying to divide up limited amounts of money. As I said before, sometimes what happens is you can only give step movement and no general wage increase. But when you give step movement, the people that are on the max step don't get anything because they have no place to go. So the way that it's settled is there's a distribution to max. Or if there's simply a step freeze and a general wage increase, well, if you're given the same percentage to a higher number than to a lower number, there is going to be a gap. So to some extent, I don't want to say they're unavoidable, but they do happen. I don't think it would eliminate it permanently, but I don't think it would revisit itself for some time to come.
And I might just say, from negotiation standpoint, this was a thing that we were aware of from the beginning of the process. This was in some ways a goal to try to mitigate this particular issue. So I imagine this is my first time around with contract negotiations, but it obviously was discussed very early on in the process, just as an awareness that this is an issue to deal with.
Representative Herron, then Representative Dean.
Hi, Doreen Herron, District 9. Can we have a comparison with vacation and sick days? Because you had made reference to getting it closer to the, is it in the packet?
It's not in the packet. What we'd have to do is pull out all the contracts again and then list it exactly what each other district has.
Is there, for someone who starts at step 1, do they get the same amount of vacation days as step 6?
Yes.
And
the same thing for sick days, because sick days are given based on statute. They're entitled to 15 days per year minimum per state statute.
And was there a reason, because now this is an additional week, so is it 5 weeks vacation plus
additional week.
3.5 potentially sick days for all administrators?
I'm not sure I understand. It's an additional.
I think there's 5 more days.
So additionally.
Oh, okay.
So in total. So
in total, yeah.
Yeah, if possible, I'd like a comparison with contracts that settled.
Oh, do we? Okay.
I don't think there's not vacation on there, but sick days. Sick days in the accrual.
Okay, I can, for Fairfield County, you did that, right?
Well, this is from you, so.
Yep. Okay, I forgot I can read off to you what some of them are from what we have done before. So I'm trying to go through this. Greenwich, 18 sick days, 225 accrued. Darien, 18 with 223 accrued. Westport, 18. Weston, 18. Wilton, 21. Norwalk, 18. Brookfield, 18. Trumbull, 18. Newtown, Monroe, and Stratford, 18. And then the ones that had 15 were Fairfield, New Canaan, Ridgefield, and Easton. This was Fairfield County.
Thank you for sick days. And then do you also have vacation?
Vacation I don't have, no.
I'd be interested if we can get that information.
Representative Dean.
Representative Dean, District 3. I'd also like to piggyback on that question with regards to long-term disability change, if we can add to make a comparison as well.
Other questions or comments? Representative Lefkowitz.
Nancy Lefkowitz, District 1. In the contract, I see that there are certain things, obviously, that fall under the jurisdiction of the superintendent. Is there any reason to say superintendent or their designee? What's happening with the fact that we have an interim? Will that impact any of those decisions or their ability to, like with vacancies, in the case of vacancies?
I'm not sure I understand your question, I'm sorry.
With the superintendent leaving and then a new one coming in, which is going to be someone who's interim?
Right, are you asking if an interim would have the legal
same
authority to do the?
Thank you, yeah.
Yes, that would be the intent,
Okay.
sure.
Further questions or comments? Representative Durrell, then Representative Lopez.
Thank you. Alex Durrell, RTM 3. page 1 of the administrative settlements in other towns, I think there's a typo in Greenwich for year 2020 to 2021. It's a 22% increment. My wife is an administrator in Greenwich. We'd really like that. Shouldn't it be 2%, I'm guessing? No, you get 1. Everyone else is getting 2, 4, 3. Do you see where I am? It doesn't affect us whatsoever, really.
I don't.
If you,
that's
Exhibit B.
That's CABE's data. That's CABE's report. That is a typo, clearly.
It should be 2. Nuts. Okay. It's some good news for my wife, yeah. Secondly, the insurance. I know you're mitigating it or minimizing it by $73,000. How much is the insurance this year, or would it be in the contract? I'm guessing $25,000 per person to be about $1 million. I mean, that's compared to the.
I'd have to get you that information. I don't know what the overall 18-19 budgeted insurance costs were.
You don't even have the total for the 40 people? I mean, we can.
I don't have that. No, not as I sit here now. I can get that for you though.
Okay, and just divide it by 40 to get what the amount is per person. Okay, and it's going up, or is it the same these next 3 years, or whatever Connecticut Plan 2.0?
In general, we're modeling a 7% per year increase for those costs.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. Just one other question. I'm not sure. Wow. Regarding the Janus decision, it might be infringing on union rights. Are we allowed to know how many, not who, decided not to remain part of the union and all that?
I have no idea the answer to that question at all. I'm sorry. I wouldn't have that information.
I figured not. I didn't know what the legal rights were. Okay. Thank you.
Representative Lopez?
Hi, Erin Lopez, District 2. I was just wondering, with the long-term disability payments starting so much sooner, are you estimating any type of financial impact from that based on, you know, what's going on, what is being paid out now?
I honestly am not sure that I have an answer for you for that right now, but I could get you that information.
Further questions or comments? Representative Spoliar?
Marcy Spoliar, District 4. Can you explain to me how an administrator would go up on the steps? Is it an automatic, you know, I'm a mediocre administrator and I'm at the same level as really someone who puts them out there? Do they have the same benefit that you'd like? It just seems like it's just a given. So what's their you know, will other than just loving the kids and their job?
I mean, it's an automatic step. It's delineated by the contract, so it's not.
You have to negotiate it. That's part of what it is. It's a negotiated. Sometimes there are no steps taken, but right now the contract that we negotiated is it's a step each year.
And do they get a review each year, each administrator by the superintendent?
I'm not sure who does them, but as far as I know, they get an evaluation each year.
But that doesn't impact how much they get raise or step?
No, the contract is the contract.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Representative Batiste?
Frank Batiste, District 10. With the accrual and sick leave going up, what happens when someone retires? Is any of that paid back, or?
Oh, you know what? I will look at the contract right now. I don't believe that there is a payout.
I didn't see it in there, but I wasn't.
I don't believe that there is a payout, but I will double check that for you.
Other questions or comments? Representative Iacono?
Thank you for this contract, and thank you for all the detail behind it. It's really helpful. I just have a comment, really. Having done this and been a part of it for a while now, I just really, truly, who handled the administrator's contract on the administrator's end?
When you say who handled it?
Who was their lead?
John Jesmond was their attorney.
And who's the president of the school administrators union, right?
Jason Bluestein, correct?
Sounds right.
I think so.
I'm
not positive.
I just want to thank Mr. Bluestein and all of the administrators for giving back on health care, because it is so important. And I know the 0.5% doesn't look like a lot, but I'm sure that was a big give on their end, and I'm really happy about it.
The .5 each year is a big deal. The teachers gave nothing. And Bob Smoller made a big sticking point about that. Now we're facing our budget, and there's a huge increase to insurance for the teachers. And as a result, the first selectman had to cut $700,000 from the operating budget at the Board of Ed. You know, if we were able to come to the table and get something there, then maybe that wouldn't have had to happen. So I just, if you wouldn't mind reaching out to him and just letting him know, at least this representative is very grateful that they recognize that even though they're at the top tier and they're paying a lot, and they are really truly leading by example, and I know I'm very grateful for it. So thank you for that, getting that. Thank you to your team for negotiating that point. It's really important, and it does have an impact on our budget. So that was a big highlight to me.
I think it was, especially since they're paying 25% already, for them to agree to that was a very big concession.
I couldn't agree with you more. That was a very big concession on that part, and I'm very grateful to have it. And I understand they got the long-term disability, and and that's good. It's a give and a take in a collective bargaining unit, but knowing that we're getting that insurance, that's important. So thank you.
Other questions or comments? Representative Pistilli?
Sharon Pistilli, District 3. A couple of comments. One is it would be helpful in the future if for any of the policies where we've changed our positioning. So for disability, it would be really helpful to know what the policy is of neighboring districts so that we see how we compare to them. And if there is a data source for that, so I can look it up myself, if you can let me know what that is, I'm more than happy to do the research.
You'd have to look up each individual contract to see what it is.
But is there a data source, like an aggregator who like takes all of that information in, so you just have to?
There is a site called concan.com where it makes available administrators and teachers contracts. However, what I found when I've gone on a lot of times that the contracts are not the most recent contracts.
Yeah, it's not updated. Yeah, okay.
So the only way to really be sure what the other districts have that you want to look at as far as a comparison is to either, number one, see if it is the most up-to-date on the Concan site, or go to that individual district website
and pull the contract out.
And look at it. As
Okay.
TD says, is that we had to do a lot of that here when we went through the negotiation process as well. So.
Okay, it's just, I think it's just good perspective, you know, for us to have. And then I just did a quick back of envelope percentile rank. I just want to let everybody know, assuming my calculations are correct. So if we include Brookfield, Greenwich, Easton, Danbury, and Bridgeport, and compare our 3-year average increase to all 5 of those districts, our percent rank is 55th percentile, including Bridgeport. And if we look at the other 4 communities, excluding Bridgeport, our percentile rank is 39th percentile in terms of 3-year average increase.
Other questions or comments? Representative Gerber?
Gerber, District 2. Attorney Cedar, thank you for putting the number of employees in each category. I'm not sure we've seen that in the past. And I remember being kind of frustrated. Maybe it was the teacher's contract, I can't remember, but just being able to sort of see where people are on the chart is really helpful. And then, you know, I did the math so I could sort of see, okay, these are collapsing and this is what it looks like, and was able to get to the numbers that you got. So really appreciate that. From a philosophical standpoint, I guess from your point of view, do you like more steps or less steps? Or do you care?
To me, it doesn't really make a difference. What I will say is that administrators' contracts are not like teachers' contracts. Teachers' contracts typically have more steps in them than administrators. It doesn't make one difference to me, really.
Would it be fair to say that the steps are just a way to get to a number that you negotiate? I mean, if you have 0 people in a step, then it doesn't matter what that, that step doesn't matter so much, or if there's only one person, so that you're really negotiating you're changing the steps and changing the increase in order to get to a number in your negotiations, that the steps aren't really that important?
No, I don't think I would say that. They become important because you don't know, number one, how many people are going to be added to them later. The steps,
people negotiating from the other side, do they care who's going to be added later?
Yeah, yes
really,
and no.
they're negotiating for themselves.
What you're getting to, though, is very, very intuitive. What you're doing is you're basing it on the snapshot that you have at the time and trying to determine what's obviously they're saying based on the snapshot, what is the best we can do monetarily, and we are trying to do the same thing from our side. The only way you can make that calculation as to what it's going to cost you is based on the snapshot, based on who's on what step. So if that's what you're getting at, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, what I'm thinking is, like, it's always so frustrating to look at these, on all the contracts, the steps and the categories, because we're tempted to think, why the heck don't we just have a number of steps that never change, and that people just sort of move through those steps, and you can rename the steps. So if there's no one in step 1, then you just sort of slide the steps down and everyone's on the same scale. And I guess the answer to that is that that's not on the other side. If there's no one in those steps, they want to take that money and allocate it somewhere to the people that are actually there, which in a sense, I guess it buffers you from big increases, but it also sort of would you wouldn't have any zeroing. If a bunch of more highly paid people left, you probably wouldn't have a small increase. You would that money would be negotiated into greater increases for the people that remain. That's what I'm thinking. Would that be fair to say? And that's why we always end up at 2%, right?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no, but I understand what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say tangentially to that, it's very important for the district to have even blank spaces on the step chart for when we need to add staff. We very rarely add people, may not necessarily add people at the lowest step. If someone is coming into our district who has 10 years, 12 years of experience, we are not likely to put them on the lowest step, the lowest compensated step. So a place needs to exist in the table for them to be put. So that's helpful for us in that sense.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, thanks for the presentation and thanks for the memo.
Thank you. If I could, just one thing. The motion is to reject the contract. And so if you wish to approve the contract, vote no. We are asking that you vote no. A vote yes is to reject it. A vote no is essentially to approve it. So we'd ask that you vote no.
And I would just say explicitly from the Board of Education standpoint, we recommend that you approve the contract.
I reject it.
By not rejecting it.
Just so everyone's aware, so the reason for that wording is that there's a statutory period that the legislative body has to reject it, otherwise it's deemed approved, right? So that's why it comes before us as to reject. That's the explanation. So that concludes that. So thank you. That concludes the joint presentations to the RTM. So we'll now break up into our subcommittees. So find your chair, and if you don't know who your chair is, let me know.